On this episode of the ITAV show, we talk about backups. What's the best system to put into place? Make sure that your data is secure and you can get it back in case something happens. Also talk about translating between IT speak and AV speak, making sure everybody is on the same page. All that and more next on the ITAV show.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is the ITAV show, episode 3, Back Me Up. The ITAV show is brought to you by our fine group of underwriters, companies like Advanced AV.
This is the ITAV show.
This is the ITAV show put on to you by the fine folks at AVNation. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. This is the third iteration of this show. We liked it so much, we're going to continue doing it, looking at both the IT space through the eyes of AV and the AV space through the eyes of IT. With us to talk about that very thing, first and foremost, Steve Kawasaki. He is from Biamp. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi, good morning. Doing well.
Also with us is Bradford Benn from Harman. Is our webmaster extraordinaire at AVNation. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Tim. Always a pleasure to see you. And actually, this is our 4th episode, and I'm going to call this one the Nixon tapes because I believe you didn't back up the last episode Steve and I were on.
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about here. We're going to start the show off actually kind of a roundabout way. We did a show about 2 or 3 weeks ago with a very nice IT manager named Jesse and you two gentlemen. Something happened, and I honestly, at this point, I'm not smart enough to tell you what happened. But that recording is no longer in existence. It may be somehow we're out in the ether in this backup or that backup. So let's actually talk about that for a second. I screwed up somewhere along the line and didn't back up my system. I lost a pretty good show that you guys were nice enough to give me a half an hour, and Jesse was nice enough to give me half an hour. So, Steve, we'll start with you because Bradford's going to give me all kinds of crap and give me other ways to back up and stuff. But when it comes to backing up systems, right, and we're talking about control code, we're talking about DSP code, we're talking about all sorts of things. What are some of the best practices that you guys have found in working with your clients?
Well, that's a great question. Okay, because backup refers to really the notion that we want to eliminate downtime. Right? Systems need to be available when the end users in whatever facility, whether it's a conference room or a huddle room or a large training room. These systems need to be online all the time and available for when people need to use them. So, backup practices are always designed to, ensure maximum uptime. So, a couple of best practices, and maybe the single best practice is to have standards. All right, so if all of your rooms are based upon different equipment or they're all custom built and you've got no standards for either control code or DSP files, then bringing a system back online, if there's some sort of hardware failure, becomes that much more difficult. You've got many files to back up. You got to figure out which one was for that particular room or whether that room was even in your archives or whatnot. But one of the best things that you can do is standardize, because that way, okay, let's say it's a training room 1, all right, and that's got a particular profile and a particular bill of materials, and you've got a standardized DSP file and a standardized control system file. That's going to be in your archive. You swap out the piece that's gone bad. You either reboot the system or you load programming into the new hardware if it's a piece of the control system or the DSP. And away you go. And that's one of the fastest ways that you can get the room back online if there is downtime. I don't know of any organization on the planet that has spares available for every one of its rooms everywhere that they need them. Yeah. Spares are good, and that's also a good way to shorten downtime. But standardization and a good program to manage that standardization is probably the most effective way of reducing, or rather, let's say, decreasing downtime when there is a failure.
Bradford, same kind of question to you, and how do you put those systems in place? How do you create those systems to begin with?
Well, so there's actually 2 sides, and Steve took the hardware side. Very valuable point. Very good point. And that's something I deal a whole lot with. I deal with large systems for my day job. And when I say large, I'm talking thousands upon thousands of amplifiers, thousands of loudspeakers, DSP engines, etc. I'm sure Steve's dealing with the same size when you look at these big distributed systems. Well, it seems funny, but both of our companies have huge catalogs of products. And I've seen a customer put in a much more powerful, many more channels of amplifier and DSP than they need for a small project because it's the standard. They buy, 20 or 30 of these spare because they have 1,000 of them. And those are the standards. So did amplifier type A have a problem or amplifier type B? And there's only 2 in stock, and they pick between those for spares. And that's how they deal with that. And the same thing for the hardware. You standardize it, you use it across the way. Now, this is both good and bad because now when you make an upgrade, you have to upgrade all your rooms, the entire campus, all of that all at the same time for your spares. So that's the hardware Steve alluded to. The standards are important, but you also need standards for file management. And very often people confuse archive, backup, and revisions, and it gets kind of blurry. And so I want to kind of make first the blanket statement. The most important thing is to have a method and follow it. I can give you a solution that I'm going to talk about that works well, but it might not be the solution for you. You have multiple control files. How do you keep track of those configuration files? Me personally, I put a time date stamp on every file in the name. It's project A, the year is 2 digits, the month is 2 digits, the day is 2 digits, space, the time in hours and minutes in military time. And people ask, well, why do you do it that way? Now I can sort by name and I have my revisions. Very easy. I keep hundreds of them if need be and then start deleting them as they get more and more irrelevant. So that's one good thing to know about. And people are like, well, how do you back those up? So I save it to my computer hard drive, and I have a program that runs in the background. They're available for Mac or Windows. I just happen to use ChronoSync on my Mac. And it copies the files and compares them between the two every couple of minutes to my local drive or my network drive. So if I make an update, it's automatically copied over to my network drive about every 15 minutes. Now that's a backup, and I can go and pull that down relatively quickly. But it's 3 years down the road, the project's out of warranty, all those things, you don't need it. Then I can actually archive and take it off my server, not pay to back it up, and put it in a deep storage, such as Amazon or Google Drive that does an archive service, like Amazon Glacier. And what's important about that is also having a standard to know where you put the file so you can retrieve it. How many of us have 30 or 40, maybe 50 unlabeled recordable CDs or DVDs lying around and you have no idea what the file is? Or my personal favorite, you have multiple thumb drives that all look the same. How do you know which one it's on? So having a practice of keeping them cataloged and organized, and there are various utilities for those that I run the catalog, so I know I can go into that catalog utility and say I'm looking for AV Week, the first episode, which was recorded in 2012, July 29th. I happen to know the file name. Go AV Week 12/07/29. Hit find. It tells me it's on my Amazon Glacier drive. I pull it down. I blackmail Tim with how different it sounds, and then off I go. Now, that's part of it. The other thing is off-site's important. This one I can't stress enough, especially for those of you who travel. I travel a lot for work. I always need to get network access so I can put my laptop data on the network quickly. The reason is how many of us have heard of people getting their laptop stolen?
Yep.
You need that data backed up and not in the same place. Don't put the thumb drive that you've backed up to while you're traveling in the laptop bag. Kind of bad. The other big thing, and people go, well, I back it up at home because I have an external hard drive. It's all backed up. I'm like, well, not really. It doesn't count as backed up for most IT professionals until it's in different formats, as in storage media, optical or spinning hard drive or flash RAM. and it's in 2 different locations, because I hope nothing bad happens to anyone. But if your spinning hard drive is under your computer and you get a power surge and both fail, there goes your backup. Or worse, someone takes both and there goes your backup with all that. So I put everything onto the cloud. I happen to use Jungle Disk for their backup process, and I get a file storage there. Some people use Google Drive. There's Dropbox. There's all sorts of solutions. But the key is to have a process and know what it is, so that if you lose the file, you know where the backups would be. And this is important. For many of us in this industry, control programmers, network administrators, AVNation podcast hosts, our bread and butter is our intellectual property. And now you have to have a way to secure and store it. So it's kind of an important thing. It's like you wouldn't leave your car door unlocked. You don't not have a copy of the keys. Why don't you have a copy of the data for the keys to your business? So a little long-winded. And I can obviously go on and on about this for weeks, months, years.
You muted yourself now.
Whoops, sorry. Hit the mouse button.
As you were saying, you could go on for weeks,
I
months, and years.
I agree with everything.
Go ahead, Steve.
I agree with what Bradford said. And I think as the organization that you're dealing with gets larger, for instance, let's just say it's not a convention center, whereby you might have thousands of amps and thousands of speakers, but you have a relatively consolidated, AV staff that's managing it. Maybe you've got half a dozen people that would touch the AV systems, or maybe even fewer in some cases. But if you magnify that out to, say, corporate enterprise or a large university campus where there might be dozens of people who touch the AV systems in different physical locations, maybe different time zones and different continents, the discipline of who is the keeper of the standard files, where do you go, and who gets to update those files, and what are the conditions under which updated files get posted. That discipline of how you manage the larger group of people becomes even more important in terms of how it's communicated among your group and sort of the regardless of what the actual physical mechanism. And Bradford, I appreciate your weighing in on those the multiple ideas, but making the assumption that corporation would typically use OneDrive or ShareFile or Box or something like that, one of the enterprise solutions. It becomes the real challenge there is to make sure that all of your team understand it and adhere to the procedures, so that you don't have somebody dragging files. Well, gee, I'll just go download the file out of this system next door and I'll use that instead, because that may not be the best practice in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you actually make a really good point and a nice segue into our next question. And that's translation. That's terminology. That's how you get everybody on the same page, using the same page. Because here's the thing: you say backup, right? You say backup to an IT manager, and they're going to think one thing. You say backup to me, which for the obvious case, and the fact that we're re-recording this episode, doesn't mean a darn thing. You say it to Bradford, and it means something completely different. It's not true. I do have copies of my old programs and stuff like that, but. Bradford, how do you get folks talking the same language? I'll throw another one out there. Bandwidth. You say bandwidth to an IT manager. You say it to someone who's configuring an AVB system or a Dante system or a video over IP system. Means something completely different. You say it to someone who's providing internet service. It means something different.
You say it to a loudspeaker manufacturer. It means something completely different.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So how do you get everybody on the same page, talking the same language?
So there's a couple ways to do this. The first one is use the proper terms and avoid jargon. One of my big bugaboos is the combination multifunction device you have at home. It's a wireless access point, a router, and a network switch all in one, as well as a firewall. It's what goes between your modem coming into your house and into your home internet. And people go, yeah, I have a wireless access point there. No, it's a multifunction device. So making sure that you actually understand what the product is doing. So like you say mixer amp, you don't say amp if you're looking for a mixer amp. The other thing is making sure you actually define your terms well. And I oftentimes, especially when traveling internationally, over-explain things. So, for instance, if even just saying the word backup, it means one thing for data, one thing for hardware. Is it online backup? Is it offline backup? Those are one things for data. If I say the same thing to a hardware guy, he's going to go, no, I want you to use hot, warm, or cold for how the backup works. And I can get into all those, what those little terms mean, but the important thing is to establish the vernacular with everyone you're talking with. It sounds silly, but on many projects, I just start writing down terms that we're using, or I'll put definitions in my documentation as I go to make sure that everyone's on the same page. I'm sure, I can tell you there have been times I've had to spend hours troubleshooting in tech support time because someone used the word router when they actually meant switch. And some of those things, it's like there's a difference between a hub, a switch, a gateway, and a router.
Yep.
And if you don't define those, you have to use them. And that's, we're all liable for that. It's kind of my big comment of there's no such thing as an Ethernet cable. There is a 4-twisted pair unshielded cable with 8P8C connectors at the end that's rated at a category 5E or higher rating. And people go, you're being a nerd. And I'm like, yes, I am. But if I ask for an Ethernet cable, you can't go to the, you can go to the new search engines and look it up in the Google and stuff. But it's important to know, is it an 8P8C connector? Are you doing it via some other connector, etc.?
Yes, but I can go on Amazon right now and I can buy an Ethernet cable. I will guarantee you I can type it in and I can absolutely purchase one. I can probably buy HDMI for $1,000 for 6 feet that has Ethernet built into it, no less.
But here's the other thing, is that category 5E cable with the 8P8C connectors on it might not be Ethernet. It might be voltage connectors. It might be AES3. Because there is a standard for that.
I'm giving you a hard time.
Yes, I know you are.
Illustrating your point.
Just remember, when was the last time you backed up your website that I can delete with the push of a button?
Yesterday, actually. I got the email saying it was backed up.
That's the database. You have the files.
Okay.
And I point that out not to make fun of you, but to make sure everyone understands. That's the importance of it. If you have the data, but you don't have the files, it's not any good. People used to laugh at me. Back when monitors were big CRTs, weighed 17 pounds and took up 18 rack spaces, I used to put a CD-ROM, that's the spinny thing that goes in the cup holder. I would tape it underneath the monitor so I knew where it was if I went back to the job site, and it had the install software for all of the programs used to configure that computer, as well as all the data files. And that's the other thing, is can someone go find me a copy of AutoCAD 2000? Or AutoCAD 14. That's part of the other process, is making sure you have a way to retrieve the data once you find it.
Yeah. Steve, same kind of question is, Bradford mentioned, making sure that everybody's on the same page, maybe even writing down terms. Does that maybe slow down the process, or are you in danger of oversimplifying things to folks, or is that really necessary to make sure that what I'm talking about when I say router is what you're talking about when you say router?
Well, I think it's a great point. It brings up the larger notion of, and there's a lot of discussion inside the AV industry, of course, about AV IT convergence, right? Which I think those of us on the webcast here would probably all agree it's already happened. It's not something that's happening. It's something that's been in progress for years. And if you accept the view that, or the notion that AV is increasingly becoming sort of an IT subspecialty that has a place at the IT table, just like security, just like network infrastructure, just like enterprise apps, like all the other different organizations that roll up to an IT department inside an organization. And increasingly, they're all siloed, right? They're all, very few of them have the expertise that the other departments do. But there's a lingua franca. There's a common language that all of these departments use to talk with each other. And if we task ourselves as an industry, as the AV industry, to become conversant in the lingua franca of IT, then all the questions sort of seem to go away. Let's make sure that we are using the standard terms for all of the different chunks of IT hardware and software and technology that they are. the same terms that they use to talk to each other, which does change from organization to organization. It's not identical, but the idea is to make sure that you're speaking in their language, and it's the common language of IT. And if you can do that, and whatever techniques you use, and I think that's a great idea, writing down their jargon, because every company does have its own jargon, and every company does have a whole lot of 3-letter acronyms that they will not explain to you unless you ask.
Yes.
Well, Tim knows this. I have a rule, and I've stumped people with it. You can't use the acronym if you don't know what it means. So, like sitting in the middle of a meeting and people going, we have to look at a SKU count reduction. And I raised my hand. So what does SKU stand for? And I'm like, it's a stock keeping unit. Okay, let's move on. But it's kind of you can't use it if you don't know what it means.
I love that. That's great.
Well, and that is, I do like that, because I've learned an awful lot hanging around Bradford and doing that. But do you run it? Is there a danger then, I guess, is in giving clients, end users, IT managers, tech managers, too much information, right? Is there a danger there in giving them too much, looking too much under the kimono, as it were?
So from my standpoint, and I think Steve would agree, feel free to correct me because I'm probably wrong. I tailor it to the customer, and I tailor it to the decision who I'm talking with. If I'm talking with Tim Albright, I'll talk more about in the global terms of, okay, this is how you get it. You're going to connect up to your multifunction wireless access point and get your connection. And it'll assign you an IP address, blah, blah, blah. If I'm talking to the IT director for AVNation, I would go, okay, so what's our range of IP addresses? How big's our subnet? All these things. So you got to tailor it. It's the same way when if you're talking about anything else, you got to know your audience. And I think a less skilled customer that you have a service contract with, you might tell them less. A more skilled customer that has a bigger infrastructure and you're using a converged network that you're sharing with the base building team, you're going to need to talk to the IT department about that. If it's a standalone network that you're just using to transport Dante or AS67 or something between front of house console and stage racks, completely different discussion. So you've got to tailor it to your audience. It's kind of like when you go in and you sell an audio system. You don't go in and talk about the bandwidth right away and what the frequency range is. You start talking about thumping bass and crisp and clear highs and those types of things. Just knowing what to tell them.
Yeah, I think there is absolutely no justification for withholding technical knowledge that can help the end clients make better decisions about how to deploy and use and maintain their systems. All of the client, the end user clients who ultimately are the ones writing the checks for these systems. Almost every one of them wants higher degree of self-sufficiency, education, and better information on how to make good decisions about how they're investing their capital and their resources. And the more information that you can give them, including the context for, okay, I'm going to show you how to connect your computer to this DSP to program it. And here's how that can help you. And here's what you need to look out for. And as long as they have the ability to absorb that, there's all upside. But the desire in the client base to have greater understanding so that they can make better decisions is a driving force that, there's no reason for us to hold back on that, as long as we understand what the context of that is. And we're offering, the appropriate surrounding information, saying, okay, well, here's how you download the software. Here's how you get a key. And here's how you jack into the DSP. All right, that's
Have
information.
fun.
It doesn't necessarily help them to get where they want to be. It depends on who they are. It's what they want to use it for.
And honestly, Steve, context goes back to talking the same language. Honestly, what it does is gives them the ability to say, okay, in this situation, this is what these words mean. So,
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much, Steve Kawasaki. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
How do people find you and or Biamp?
Well, they can find Biamp on the web at www.biamp.com. I'm at steve.kawasaki at biamp.com. I'm based here out of Seattle, and I handle sales management duties, among other things, for Biamp here in the western part of North America.
All right, very good. And Mr. Bradford Benn from the great Harman. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure as always. Always good to talk with Steve. Always a pleasure to talk with you, Tim.
How do people find you?
So at work, it's harman.com. Go to the pro division. You can find me at bradford.benn at harman.com. You can also find me lurking at AVNation.tv. Go to the website, see the cool things I've got planned. Follow me on Twitter instead of Tim at Bradford Benn. And you can always go to bradfordbenn.com and you can see some of the stuff I've posted up there about backups and stuff. And of course, my bobble pictures.
And his bubble pictures, yes, his bubble pictures are impressive. If you're not watching the video, at least go to the YouTube and watch the video, at least to see Bradford's bobbles. So
I'll just post a picture on the web.
There we go.
I have
my name is Tim Albright. Bradford said it. Don't follow me on the Twitters, but go by the website if you would, please. Bradford and Matt and a bunch of really great folks have done a really great job on that. Actually, Bradford is working on a brand spanking new one that should be out by the end of February. So take a look at that. If you're listening to this, the first part of February in 2017, when it will be released, and you're headed to ISE, please come see us. Actually, come see both of these gentlemen right here. They will be in Integrated Systems Europe. And the other thing I would say is, if when you go by the website, check out our underwriters. Both these fine gentlemen, their companies are underwriting AVNation. So thank you guys. It's a different business model. It's a different way that we support and are able to do what we do. But we appreciate the companies that help us out and make it possible for us to continue to do AVNation. So check those out as well. All that stuff is at AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the ITAV show.